Hello, I'm Mark Corcoran and welcome to my country, Australia. Australia is a very multicultural place. In fact, 1 in 5 Australians was born overseas. And this documentary is about Simon Palomares. He's an Australian stand-up comic who goes in search of his true Spanish identity. He wants to see if he's as funny in Spain as he is here in Australia, and whether he can get away with some very non-PC language. Welcome to my country.
We're going to get the show rocking and rolling again. I'm going to bring on a gentleman who was one of the creators of Wogs Out of Work and consequently changed the face of comedy forever in this country. He played Ricky on Acropolis now. Let's give it up for the one, the only, Mr. Simon Palomares!
My family looks like now. You know, we all get together at Christmas, and you know, if you can imagine, you know, everybody's sitting on the couch. There is my 12 and 14-year-old. You know, they're emos, and so they're not saying much because they're 14 and 12 and can't express the darkness of their souls. Here is my mum and dad over here. They're not saying anything because they've been here for 40 years and still can't speak the language. Okay, so this is the zoo that is my family now, okay?
I've got my kids here in Australia, my father in Spain, so I'm always trying to work out, well, where is home? You know, my kids have grown up here, they were born here, and yet you take them out to the bush, and they're like a fish out of water.
Dad being on stage gives us the shits because he's getting paid to make jokes about us. We get no royalties or anything, and all we get is reputation as snobby, stereotypical teenagers, which isn't too far off the mark.
Whoa! Well, I've just had 3 of my grandsons riding in this.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Tip-top.
And your dad, he is a comedian. Yeah? Good?
He likes to think so.
Yeah. And obviously you do.
Oh, yeah, he's always good for a laugh at home. But, yeah, I think he saves most of it for the stage.
So is he Spanish descent too?
Yeah.
Is he
really?
really?
Full-blood Spanish, yeah.
Look at that. Now, that is a man. A Spanish smile, that's it.
We're just surrounded by these, like, stereotypical Australians, like, drinking VBs with their cowboy hats and their horses and whips, and it just makes us feel just like we're just tourists in this country now.
So this is the first time you've met a Spanish guy?
It is.
It is?
It is.
Mwah. Mwah.
Oh, I'm learning quickly.
You are. I've always found the question of cultural identity a bit confusing.
Oh, you're the little spick, are you?
Yeah, so she's gurgling in Spanish, see? A lot of people still think I'm Greek in Australia because of my work with a sitcom.
No, seriously, I would love to live in a huge communal house with lots of kids growing up with heaps of adults so they can all relate to one another.
And lots of friends and relatives who feel they can just walk in whenever they feel like it.
That's it, exactly.
Yeah, you should marry a wog.
I couldn't say wog when I first met him. And it was such a negative term that it was, you know, I had no experience. I was really skip, even though I'd been raised in a sort of progressive family.
I'm a wog. And to use that word back then was completely inflammatory.
A Spaniard in Australia was labelled a wog. And so I just carried that as though it was just another title or another name, you know. So I had my first name, my second name, my third name, and then I had the wog.
And then someone taught me, my kumbaro, Artemis, my best man, taught me the word skip. And that was a great comeback, you know. Convicts and skips, thank God for that. Thank God you guys were convicts.
And there they were suddenly emerging before our very eyes, saying, hey, you're not aware, but we're a group out here, and we're to be reckoned with, and this is this dual culture that we've been developing. Didn't you know? We refer to each other as wogs.
I grew up in a neighbourhood where everybody was a wog, and it never made any sense to ignore it, or to hide it, or not be proud of it.
I think shows like Wogs Out of Work made people really proud to have another culture that wasn't, you know, Australian in origin. So the following was huge because it really satisfied a missing element.
And to me, the biggest achievement is that after Wogs Out of Work, the word wog was put into the Australian Macquarie Dictionary as a word that may be used as a term of affection in between certain groups.
Hi, how are you? Where are you from in Spain? Spanish people? Barcelona. Barcelona. They're really Spanish. Sorry about that. Okay. Anybody from Madrid? Over there? Hi, how are you?
In February this year, I find myself 17,000 kilometres away from home, about to go on stage and do a gig in Spanish in front of a television audience of over 3 million people. And I can't remember the Spanish word for door. 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 Puerta. Door. Door. Puerta. Door. I mean, I've died on stage before, but, like, I've never died in front of 3 million people. And I'm thinking, what am I doing here? Well, to answer that, I have to go right back to the beginning.
To a small village in the south of Spain, known not only for the quality of local pigs, but for my kind but anxious mother, Dolores, and proud father, Gabriel, who met under the oppressive reign of Franco's dictatorship. So my father decided to pack up and head off for greener pastures. To Germany, to the heavy industrialized city of Düsseldorf, famous for its manufacture of floor wax, where they both worked on the production line. That wasn't the only thing they worked on, and in May 1962, I was born, Simón Palomares Escalera. At only 3 months of age, my father decided to send me back to Spain, where I was looked after by my 3 aunties and 2 grandmothers, a move that laid the seeds to my addiction to cigarettes, a stand-up comedy, and a complete nervous breakdown. At the age of 4, my father took me back from the loving arms of my doting aunties and grandmothers, and I was taken back to Düsseldorf, until a year later, when my father decided to take the family back to Spain, where we lived in a little village famous for its psychiatric hospital. Still not happy with the homeland, my father, who loved the TV series with the kangaroo that goes, moved us halfway around the world to Melbourne, a city famous for its trams, football, and a swimming pool named after a drowned Prime Minister. We stayed in the immigration hostel in Springvale and ate lots of meat. I went to uni to study psychology and of course became a comic, being one of the creators of a famous comedy show that explored the plight of migrants, like my parents, and a TV series. I fell in love with a pretty girl in the show, and we had a wedding, 4 funerals, and 2 boys. She suffered from postnatal depression. We all did. Not being enough, I decided to have a nervous breakdown. My father retired and took my mother back to Spain. I got a divorce while I continued with my stand-up until I got the news of my father's illness. So my sons and I flew back to Spain to discover my father in one ward of the hospital and my mother on a deathbed in another. She passed away 3 days later. After the funeral, I flew back to Melbourne with my sons. And now, with the Paramount gig calling, I return to Spain to my roots. And so on the 24th of January, I find myself with my 2 sons in my Melbourne apartment and running late for the airport for a flight back to Spain.
Jay, laptop.
Yeah, I'm getting up. I need the laptop, thank you. Hey, would you mind if I got another piercing? It's in my wallet.
Under the bed. Your bed.
Oh, I need money for a med card too.
There.
Thanks, Dad.
That.
No, it's not enough.
Kisses.
See ya.
Okay.
You need a passport?
Thank you. Okay. Going back to Madrid is going to give me the chance to try and do some stand-up in Spanish. And after a 26-hour flight from hell, I am met at the airport in Madrid by Jorge Segura, who is a local Spanish comic. And he's going to give me some gigs and introduce me to Spanish comedy. And the first thing he does is introduces me to the subtle art of Spanish driving. It's true, the traffic in Madrid is insane, but it's also true that it's very, very beautiful. I'm a romantic, you know, you can't help it here. Europeans don't understand jet lag the way Australians do. Jorge's already dragging me to my first gig at some nightclub.
Okay, XXL.
It seems very risky stuff to go off and be a stand-up comedian.
Un aplauso muy fuerte de cortesía para Simón Palomares desde Australia, Vallecas.
So on the one hand, you could kind of die a death on stage, but on the other hand, you could get a fantastic reward, which is that extraordinary adrenaline rush of hearing an applause that's for you and you alone.
Ouch, yow, ouch, no, en inglés. Y entonces al cuarto o quinto día ya me empieza a cambiar, ¿me entendéis? Ya me empieza a cambiar el cerebro y ya cuando me levanto el quinto, sexto día, ya me levanto y nueve, ¡pum! Y ya me sale. Y bueno, mi padre es de Sevilla. Mi padre es de Sevilla y mis hijos son australianos, ¿no? Y son góticos, son emos. ¿Sabéis lo que son emos? Sí, vale. Emos son como góticos.
I died. Oh, you died? I died. I hated it. I haven't had a gig like that in years.
But you built up some cojones there. A gentleman who was one of the creators of Wogs Out of Work and consequently changed the face of comedy forever in this country. He played Ricky on Acropolis now. Let's give it up for the one, the only, Mr. Simon Palomares!
My family looks like now. You know, we all get together at Christmas, and you know, if you can imagine, you know, everybody's sitting on the couch. There is my 12 and 14-year-old. You know, they're emos, and so they're not saying much because they're 14 and 12 and can't express the darkness of their soul.
He's an Australian stand-up comic who goes in search of his true Spanish identity. He wants to see if he's as funny in Spain as he is here in Australia, and whether he can get away with some very non-PC language. Welcome to my country.
We're going to get the show rocking and rolling again. I'm going to bring on...
Here is my mum and dad over here. They're not saying anything because they've been here for 40 years and still can't speak the language. Okay, so this is the zoo that is my family now, okay?
I've got my kids here in Australia, my father in Spain, so I'm always trying to...
Hello, I'm Mark Corcoran, and welcome to my country, Australia. Australia is a very multicultural place. In fact, 1 in 5 Australians was born overseas. And this documentary is about Simon Palomares.